Hi there, this is Dr. Kieran Kuykendall, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about anxiety. So many of the people in the world right now are struggling with anxiety, and it has to do a lot with what's going on. And people are concerned about their money, their livelihoods, what they're doing, the direction of the state of the world. And there's a lot that can be done to support with anxiety because you really don't want to live your life like this. Being in anxiety will literally cut you off from your heart to your head. It cuts you right here where you literally can't make clear decisions. It throws you in your frontal cortex and sets you in a situation where you're feeling very fearful all the time. I personally used to have this when I was younger, and it was so terrible that I would call 911 because my heart would freak out. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was dying. Literally, a lot of the hospital visits right now are very anxiety based. In fact, our neighbor recently, when he thought he was having a heart attack, and there's reasons for this, and there's things that you can do to actually unravel this whole thing. And the first one is there's four primary tenets, okay, that we look at when we're dealing with anyone with any health component in the realm of natural medicine. So we're going to look at your structure, we're going to look at toxicity, we're going to look at the emotional component, and we're going to look at your biochemical / nutrition component. So those are the four primary components. And to give you a lot of value, the most important thing to really, really know is for any health condition, whether it's anxiety, fatigue, exhaustion, autoimmune disease, any kind of stuff, inflammatory, there's only two fuels that run your brain. That's oxygen and glucose. Oxygen, glucose. A lot of women will have very heavy menstrual cycles, or they're not getting enough iron in their diet. So they'll literally be iron deficient. So that will cause, well, what is that? That's anemia, and that causes oxygen deficiency. What would happen if I were to come over there and just put my hands around your throat? Well, at first you would fight and struggle and you'd get really fearful. But after a period of time, you just kind of slowly, you just have my hands around your neck and you actually are just feeling like, oh, I feel so exhausted. And this kind of problem causes you to lose the oxygen in the brain. Low states of oxygen cause anxiety. Right. If you think of Vegas, what do? They pump oxygen into the room. So you're up, and having a great time, feeling wonderful, spending money all night long. And so if there's a deficiency in that oxygen, that's a serious problem. And one of the ways to test for that is a CBC. You look at your red blood cells, hemoglobin, hematocrit. You could also do a blood test for ferritin, your serum ferritin, which is an earlier marker for iron-based anemias. There's also B vitamin anemias and other forms of anemia that can happen. But to keep it simple for today is we want to make sure you're getting enough of the oxygen into your bloodstream. So if you're struggling with anxiety, one of the simple things you can do is just do some breath work. Get out there and move your body, get moving, and that growth hormone will actually increase, and that growth hormone will help you actually reduce your stress as well. It affects the whole hormonal and neurochemical system, but get the oxygen up in your body. So get moving, do some breath work, check with your doctor or someone like myself. I can run all of these blood chemistry tests for you with great ease. And we can determine very quickly, oh my gosh, you don't have enough oxygen in your body. So that's one important thing. The second most important thing you need to know, right, is again, there's only two fuels that run and function your body. That's oxygen and glucose, right? And so glucose, if your blood sugar is spiking too high or if it's coming down too low, this causes an imbalance. So your blood sugar starts doing this all day. And every time it drops, cortisol has to spike. And every time spike happens, it causes other hormonal things to happen. I don't want to get too involved. I want to give you some real quality things that you can actually do. So balance and maintain your blood sugar. You can do this through a paleo diet. You can do this through a ketogenic diet or other forms of the many thousands of diets and acronyms of diets on the planet. But keep it simple. Don't let your blood sugar drop. Like if you want to do an intermittent fast, start eating in the afternoon around 11 or noon, that's fantastic. But after that, you want to eat more regularly throughout the day, because if you're not getting that normal blood sugar flow in from your food, it's going to drop. Or if you're getting too much simple carbohydrates, too much sugar or processed foods, that blood sugar is going to stay very high. And that also will cause a tremendous amount of problems. So that's oxygen and glucose. And the other component is activation, which is just movement. So move your body, which is why I mentioned get out there and move your body, do some breathing, for goodness sakes. That's really important. So again, the four components of it is your structure, your biochemistry, your toxicity, and your emotional field. So let's talk a little bit about all of those. Now, in my background, we look at the nervous system, we look at the spinal function, we look at the muscles and the bones and all of that, and that's part of structure. But if you're working with me online, like many of the thousands of people I see online, we want to talk about structure from a nervous system standpoint. That's the central nervous system. And one of the things that I find that's really key is that people's what's called sympathetic atonia, but where the nervous system is just too geared up and it's just going, 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 and all of these things. And this causes a real problem. It doesn't allow you to relax and down regulate. And I want you to know in future videos, because I'm just starting to get more of these shares out to you guys. I've always had a busy practice, but I'm feeling a desire to share more people online because people need help. They need solutions. And I'm not finding a lot of our doctors are working with this. They'll typically work with, nutrition or a pharmaceutical drug. They'll tell you to stand on your head and eat a certain way. And those are great. But a lot of times, these anxiety conditions and other health conditions, this, by the way, is good for any health condition you're dealing with, oxygen, glucose, in dealing with the 4 components that I've mentioned twice. They don't look at the structure the way that we should be looking at it. And when I say structure, I mean the parasympathetic nervous system. So from the tip of your tongue all the way to the anus is one system called the enteric nervous system. Just like you have the respiratory system, the cardiovascular, the lymphatic system, the skin, right, is a system. It's one of the largest on the body. And so we need to really recognize that we must be looking at the central nervous system as a whole. And the way we miss these things is a lot of people have issues with the vagus nerve not working appropriately, okay? And one of the ways this happens is by the diaphragmatic muscles. Because of years of stress, anxiety, people are neck breathers. They're not breathing from their diaphragm. We need to work to release the diaphragmatic muscles. Some people have a sliding hiatal hernia or actually true medical hiatal hernia, but this puts pressure where the stomach is actually coming up and pushing on the diaphragm, and it causes a spasm in there. Whether the chicken or the egg, the spasm came first, or an upset in your system somehow, it's there. And so in future subsequent videos, if you have interest, please text me or let me know right here as I'm speaking that we can really look at. Let's show you how to actually release and relax your central nervous system, and specifically by going through the vector of the diaphragmatic muscles. These diaphragms can get in spasm. They cause a chemical pressure on the nerve, okay, that's coming through the diaphragmatic muscle, and that pinches on the vagus nerve, and that's called the great wanderer, and it can give you issues with lungs, in digestion, with your digestion, not indigestion, but with digestion, with the cardiovascular system. It's called the great wanderer, right? And it's also called the great mimicker, the vagus nerve. And so this pressure on the nerve by way of a chemical process called neuropraxia, okay? So we want to release that diaphragm, and there's a lot of ways about going about that, and we'll talk about that. There's also very simple things that you can do that will stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system and help you to be more calm. Now, I want to say all this as a caveat. All of these things are great ways to approach and address it, but we need to get more to the core of it. And at the very core of any kind of issues with anxiety is consciousness. I'm afraid about the world. I'm afraid about the situation. I'm dealing with my ex-partner and the stress there. And so all of these things are good, but we really need to dial it in deeper. And that's why working with somebody directly is a much better situation. You just got to have a doctor that you really love and you really trust. When I was going through my early stages of severe health issues, now seeing over 46,000 patient visits over the years, I just couldn't find anyone. So you need to find someone in person or online. And I'm a great resource for you if you need any support in that. And so I just want you to know there is help. These things literally do not have to last forever. They just don't. In fact, they can be really big blessings. All of your health issues that you're dealing with, they're a blessing in disguise if you just know how to recognize it and then to go about it. So we've talked a little bit about structure. So next, let's talk a little bit about the biochemistry. And we spoke a little bit about that through blood and sugar. Okay, blood and sugar, your blood sugar, I should say, controls so much, but also your oxygen, right? We talked about those. Now, some other big ones that can cause these things in the one of the 4 components, right? Structure, biochemistry being number 2, is endocrine function, like how's your endocrine system working, how are your hormone systems working, all of these kinds of things. And so one of those things is to look at how basically your adrenal function is. A lot of us are just go go go, and we're burning the candles at both ends, and so we have a lot of cortisol being produced. This cortisol causes these spikes, and when you have these spikes in cortisol, it causes spikes in blood sugar, and it creates this whole cascade. And when you have spikes in blood sugar and cortisol, it causes hormonal changes like luteinizing hormone and estrogen. And later, you start to turn all of this estrogen into testosterone, and that causes a lot of anger and frustration. So, the biochemistry component, oxygen, glucose, we talked about movement, but we really want to address what's going on with the adrenal system. And in the past, I used to do a lot of these more saliva-based cortisol tests. I find them expensive and quite unnecessary these days. Usually just incorporating an adaptogenic herb or something that's going to help balance the overall cortisol rhythm of the body throughout the day really, really helps. So that's, I think, enough to be said there. I mean, autoimmune thyroid and thyroid issues will also cause issues, and I'll cover those in much greater detail. Today's like just big brushstrokes to make it simple for you to understand. The next big one that can cause it, but not as much of an issue for anxiety specifically, but can be, is toxicity. And there's 4 aspects of toxicities. That's metals, okay? There can be a metal toxicity that goes on either from your amalgams or something in your mouth or your work environment. Metals, hormones, right? There can be infection. There could be chemicals. Those are the 4 big ones. And a 5th one is electromagnetic fields. We're swimming in so much electromagnetic pulsations these days, and it has huge impacts on people. So we want to make sure that you're always detoxifying and eliminating properly from the body, because if you're not properly eliminating these things from the body, then these things start to build up, and that liver, right? Your liver's your oil filter. That liver can't detoxify, and when it can't detoxify, then it's almost like the leaves and the sticks in a river in the fall, like it is here in the Appalachia. They start to build up, and then the water doesn't flow, and it starts to pool and fall over the side of the river and the stream, and that's the symptoms. It's the overflow. So we want to address what metals are going on, what kind of hormonal imbalances, what kind of chemical environment that may need to be addressed or detoxified, and certainly looking at infections. And those big infections are often funguses, right? Like candida or mold in your environment. Could be bacteria, could be viruses, could be spirochetes. And these things, worms, helminths, and all of these types of parasitic things, these also cause a lot of symptoms in the body where it makes you feel very stressed and overwhelmed. And so I think number 1 being looking at the adrenal system, looking at your endocrine and thyroid, looking at some basic toxicity, looking at your oxygen and glucose, you're really in a really good direction. And then finally, number 4, right? We said structure, biochemistry, toxicity, and number 4 is the emotional component. These are the 4 pillars, if you will, when we're looking at somebody. If you're going to stay steady on a stool, you have to make sure all the stool legs are actually working, and they'll hold you up or you just fall down. So the 4th one is the emotional component. And I use many different types of approaches to work with the emotional component with people. And this is something that you want to learn to do for yourself, so you really take your power back. This is something where you can put the power back in your own hands. And so, there's counseling out there, and there's psychology and psychiatry where there's medications and all these things, but we want to deal with the root causation. And most of the time, it's the stuff that we don't want to feel, right? I don't want to feel afraid, so I'm going to have a drink and just relax. I don't want to think about work tomorrow, so I'm going to have a donut or open a box of wine. These kinds of things, we need to look at what's the consciousness state that's driving you to the action that you're doing. You say, well, I have diabetes, Well, why do you have diabetes? Well, it's because of the way I eat. But why do you eat the way you eat? It's consciousness, and that falls under the 4th or emotional compartment. And if you're struggling and you're like, man, I got these habits, I got these things, and I just can't seem to quit them, know that there's actual real ways, science-based ways, like I'm talking about the science-based solutions to anxiety and many other components today. There's many things that you can do. One of the processes is just allowing you, I'd show you if we do some work together, I can show you in subsequent visits, is to just really allow yourself to connect in with yourself, really feel what's going on for you specifically. What's happening? Where do I feel this fear? Where is it at in my body? What's the shape of the fear? What's the fear trying to teach me? Is this really my fear? Because you're all that is, ever was, and ever will be. You're infinite. You're powerful beyond measure. And the simple fact is, our humanity has really forgotten this, and it separates us. So I just really pray that some of this today will help you. I wanted to keep it short and simple. Of the four components of the structure, the biochemical component, the nutrition, and the emotional component. And remember, oxygen and glucose are the first two really key things. You just need to make sure you're getting enough oxygen and enough stable, regular flow of blood sugar throughout your body, not skipping meals, not eating a lot of sugary, carbohydrate rich foods. And it will really begin to stabilize you so much. So I hope that really helps you take your power back. If you want any support, just visit my website at lifeempowered.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And this is Dr. K. If you have any questions, just send me a question under the comments. I'll make a specific video for you. I look forward to sharing more in the future, and I'll give you a great big hug. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.